Welcome to Culture Snap. I'm Keeva Stratton, and today I'm joined by the ever-provocative creative force, Ant Melder. From his East London roots to his life in Sydney, Ant's journey is a testament to the power of authentic self-expression. In this episode, we dive into the formative influences that shaped his creative path, from dreams of football stardom and a love of literature to the rebellious spirit of London's art scene. We'll explore how Ant's agency Coco Gun and his playful, thought-provoking art project Rubbish Fantastic blur the lines between commercial creativity and pure artistic freedom. Get ready for a conversation about art, authenticity, and the courage it takes to show up as your true self. Let's get started. Ant Melder, welcome to Culture Snap.
Thank you. Good to be here. Cheers, Keeva.
I'm so excited to have a chat with you today. You've got this kind of provocatorial career. Tell me, who was Ant as a child? Were you always someone who liked to be a bit rebellious, or were you the opposite?
Good question. And I love the provocatorial thing as well. Yeah, that's probably true. And I'm kind of, that's on brand for me. I didn't really know or understand what a career in creativity could be, or kind of where I was from, East London, that you could have a career in, being creative. It didn't really seem like an option when I was growing up. So the things that I kind of wanted to be, but these were always, I would say they were kind of like fantasies, but like I think they were real in my head. Was like from a very young age, the first thing I wanted to be was a priest, because like a big part of my family is Catholic, and so I had a Catholic upbringing, Catholic schools and so on. And I'm definitely not Catholic now. I'm very much an atheist now. But at the time when I was much, much younger, I just loved all the ceremony, all the dressing up and all the kind of crazy chanting and things in the church and stuff. I thought that was all sort of super cool. It's a bit like showbiz when you're 6 years old. So I kind of love that. But then I kind of quickly kind of grew out of that. Then I wanted to be a footballer, because I just loved football, and still do, and was quite good at football. But then sort of at some stage realised I probably, although I loved it and was quite good, I was never going to be good enough to actually do that for, to play for England or whatever. And then I got really into athletics, and I just love athletics as well. That's another thing that I love. 1500 metres is my race. So I wanted to be the 1500 metre world record holder. So from probably about the age of 12, I was kind of no internet back those days, but constantly looking up, what's the world record for 1500 metres? What's the time now? When am I going to meet that time? All the way till about 16, when I started smoking, and then that kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on the 1500 ambitions, unfortunately.
And do you still run today?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I still do. I mean, although I'm 50 something myself now, so I'm definitely not as fast as I was, but I still absolutely love it. There's this author that you might know of called Albert Camus. He's a French author, one of my favorite authors, and he was a footballer. He played professional football. He was a goalkeeper, and he said, he's got this quote where he said, "Everything I learned from life, I learned from football." And I guess he was thinking about the, I don't know, the teamwork and the friendship and the connections and all those sorts of things, strategy, I guess. And I would sort of say that was true for me, but for 1500 meters running, because I think everything kind of you would want to know about life is in a 1500 meters race. The strategy, the pain, the kind of pushing through, the testing yourself, all of those things I've kind of I've found it in 1500, doing it and watching it.
It's interesting, isn't it, as an adult, when you reflect back on those early formative sports? Because I agree. I think that you do learn your discipline, you learn about hard work, you learn about how to handle disappointment and rejection and all of those things in those kind of early sporting moments. It's interesting that you had both a team sport and a very individual sport. Did you feel that the 1500 was a team sport, or was it something that was very much a solo ambition?
Um, I was always into the sort of team thing, because I really like sports and I really like team sports. But the 1500 was more of a solo sort of thing. And like you said, yeah, the things you learn from it, particularly when you're older and you carry them through, the how to deal with nerves, and and then as you get better, the kind of it's for the school, it's for the county, it's for the whatever. You kind of, the level's getting higher and the nerves are getting more and the stakes seem to be getting higher and all of those things. And no, I've just learned so much, in so much from that in lots of ways.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I reflect a lot upon my youth was very much my team sport was netball and my individual sport that was probably better at was gymnastics. And that's a very, very kind of individual pursuit. And I think it does mirror creativity a little bit because when you work in a creative dynamic, obviously you have to work in flow as a team. But I think the pressure of a creative ultimately often comes from yourself, right? You really are competing with your own standards and your own ambition and where it is that you want to stretch as a creative. So I think it's interesting that you've got a similar individual sport and then something that is quite team focused.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Yeah, I love that sort of insight. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. And because in my work and in sort of being creative, I love the putting the headphones on and doing something, doing some writing or doing some painting or whatever it may be, writing a poem. But I also love the collaboration of creativity as well. So I like having a bit of both of those things, like working with people and then working on your own. And when you've got a nice blend, I feel like I've got a nice blend in my life. That's spot on for me.
I was reading that you spoke in another interview and said something about to be a writer means you must be a reader. And you spoke a lot about some of the writers that had really inspired you. Tell me a little bit about how your kind of preferences for writing or preferences for authors have kind of influenced your own style and you know the type of work that you produce.
Oh, yeah, that's another great question as well. Yeah, I mean, I think there was one of the questions, one of the themes that I was looking at when you sent some stuff over was what have been the formative influences on your life, and probably the biggest formative influence outside of anything else has been reading because I love reading. I'm a big reader. Uh, I love sharing books as well and being recommended books and kind of reading something, then passing it on and getting other people's views or hearing what someone's favorite book is or something they've loved and then reading that. It's just such an awesome insight. I mean, there's, do you know that the famous Socrates, the Greek dude quote where he said like the unexamined life is not worth living, and I always thought like the reading thing sort of played into that. It's just such a great way of like thinking about other people's lives or other stories, other things, and then you always, or I do anyway, always kind of relate it back to myself and my own life. Could I have done that? Would I have done that? Oh, why did they do that? You know, all those sorts of things. I really find it's sort of it's enjoyable and entertaining because you're entering all these story worlds, and it's also it also kind of instills growth because you kind of then sort of overlay that onto your own life. So it's always been like a massive thing for me, and yeah, it saddens me that like a lot of people don't read these days. Like my kids, my teenage boys are not. I was going to say not big readers, but they're not readers at all. Really, they just they like looking at TikTok. But for me, I don't know, reading like a Dostoevsky novel or whatever it may be is as much fun as looking on TikTok for them, I guess. So it's kind of a big deal for me. I'm sort of surrounded by like a lot of people that are into reading, and I surround myself with those sorts of people as well. So I find that nourishing and fun.
So you said, you know, that you love that question of what is your favorite book? I'm someone who hates that question because it's just one of those things that I could not. It's like, what's your
Yeah,
favorite film? Well, give me
yeah.
a genre, an era, a director, and I'll give you a favorite. But do you have favorites or is it something that it just evolves over time?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm like you. It's impossible, isn't it? Because it changes every 5 minutes or every day or every week or whatever. But over the years, there've definitely been some faves, and then I think there's a bit of a what's the word recency bias in terms of the things you've read more recently sort of float to the top. But there've definitely been some that have stayed with me. Probably the one that I'd call out that's kind of relatively recent. There's a book called All Fours by Miranda July. I don't know if have you read that?
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You should read it. Yeah. Yes, I read that about a year ago. I think it was out about a year or 2 years ago. Um, and that for me is when I was thinking about formative, like sort of things that have culturally sort of informed your life. Like I said, there's some books and there's some music and stuff and places. Um, and some of it, like, the way that a lot of things that really are formative or really impact you are when you're younger or when you're a teenager or in your early 20s, and like things have a really big impact on you. And well, that's certainly true for me. But the book All Fours by Miranda July. That's kind of something I read in my 50, like I say, a year ago, a couple of years ago. So like when I was much older, and it felt like that book had an effect on me that was the same as the kind of books that I loved when that I read when I was a teenager that had, really big effects on me. It's about it's about how this lady who's I think she's in her 40s deals with menopause basically, yeah,
Yeah.
and she kind of she's dealing with all the stuff, the emotional and physical stuff that go with that, and she's kind of trying to understand her identity, her sexuality, like kind of what's important to her, all of these things. And it is all very much about the perimenopause. So you may be going, oh, hang on a second, when did you go through the perimenopause? But I feel like there's lots of insights there that could kind of, that you can relate to, male or female or whatever, that are just about when you're at a certain part of your life where a lot of it's behind you and you're wondering what's next and like, who am I and what does this all add up to and where do I go from here and all that kind of stuff. Kind of, maybe you could call it like a sort of an emotional breakdown. But anyway, she takes the parts of her life apart and she puts them back together, and it gets very, very sexual and very kind of raunchy, and it really goes to some quite full-on provocative places that just it really, really resonated with me and really made me kind of think, okay, wow. And I think it's like because you kind of get to a certain age and you're like, oh, well, if I've done this, 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 and this, then I should do this, or this is what's expected of me. And in this book, All Four, she's like, no, I'm not going to do what's expected of me. I'm going to kind of look at it and work out what's right for me.
To me, reading's all about building empathy and self-exploration and, kind of understanding yourself through how you feel about what other characters do and, how they see the world. And, as you say about this character who's having somewhat of an emotional breakdown, but it probably hits a lot of nerves for people at this particular point in life where you're right, you do start to assess what's next and, the body changes and the mind changes and perspective does. So it's kind of interesting to see that. I always think there's a very unique kind of culture of London and that kind of view of rebellion that is quite distinct to that particular place. Have you ever reflected on how London has shaped you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Going back to that, if one of the questions was around what are the things that have shaped you, probably London is the thing that's had the biggest effect. I mean, outside of my family experiences, I would say London is the thing that's shaped me the most. That's where I kind of grew up. That's a place that I absolutely love. Best city in the world. Yeah, the music, the art, the culture, the books, the yeah, just the cultural explosion, or not even the cultural explosion, the cultural explosions that take place weekly. 1 minute it's this, oh no, now it's this music scene, it's that music scene. It's just a place that's just endlessly exciting, and yeah, has just kind of left it's kind of left its mark on me sort of inside and out. Kind of, although I'm a proud Australian resident and citizen now, I'll always be proud of being a Londoner, and even specifically like an East Londoner, because that's a very specific kind of thing. I spent my whole life there until I came here to Sydney about 12 or 13 years ago, and I love it here, and this is great for this part of my life. But yeah, God, I do often get misty-eyed thinking about London and missing London for all of the reasons above. Sydney's like a beautiful place, but it's not a cultural kind of hub. It's got some great stuff, but you need to search it out. But in London, if you're into Polish animation, then the Polish Animation Festival is on tomorrow night in Shoreditch, probably. But if you're into Polish animation here, it's probably on in 2027 in Melbourne. So you have to kind of seek out the things that you like. But that's all right. You just have to work a little bit harder.
I think it's interesting with Sydney. I think there's so much culture in Sydney, but you're right, you do have to be active in it. So you have to actually kind of really work hard to find it and, to find your people, to find your particular kind of events, music, that type of thing. It's not as simple as in some of those big hubs or even in Melbourne. We'll give Melbourne those points. But I am really interested in because you've got your agency that you've set up 2019, Coco Gun, which, is very much that kind of professional extension of your writing and that area of your creativity. But I have been having a look at Rubbish Fantastic, and this is something that I'm really fascinated by. And I think that there is something here that stems from your youth and going back to perhaps a sense of more freedom in your art. First of all, I want to get a sense of what do you think art is? And I know that's a big question, but what do you think defines something as art?
Yeah, God, that is a big question. But yeah, I mean, maybe rewind a second, and I'd say one of the other sort of one of the big sort of formative things on my life outside of London, and we talked about reading, it is is art, and like a sort of an approach to kind of asking myself what is art, subconsciously, not like this, like sort of directly, like, because that kind of, I guess subconsciously I'm always thinking, or have always been thinking, like, what is this thing? And I had this experience when I was about 15, or maybe I was 16, 15 or 16 years old, and I heard about this artwork called it's called Piss Christ by a guy called Andre Serrano, and I'd read about it in a newspaper or something, a magazine, and I kind of really wanted to see it, but I didn't really know about art or the art world or art galleries or whatever. And I mentioned it to my dad. My dad was really into art as well and music and stuff, so he's like, "Oh, we'll go." So it was the first time, age 50, because where we were in East London wasn't really, art was seen as like something for the I don't know, for the wealthy people or the middle classes or something, and that wasn't really our background. So I don't know, it was quite alien to me. But we went to this art gallery, to the Saatchi Gallery, actually, in St John's Wood in northwest London at the time, and there were various pieces, but a lot of it was kind of installation art and like art that wasn't like a painting. And I just remember being 15 and kind of being quite unsure of myself and not knowing how to carry myself in am I supposed to stand there? Or am I supposed to look at it? And like, what am I supposed to be thinking? And I sort of was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was quite enjoying it. And then I saw this photograph that I'd kind of heard about, Piss Christ, and it was basically a huge photograph of like a plastic crucifix that had been dropped into like a see-through box of urine. And so it's kind of yellowy, orangey glow, and it's like this plastic crucifix like that you would buy in like a gift shop or something, huge. And I sort of read the little thing, and I was just standing there going like, wow, like that can be, I thought art had to be a painting of a thing, but like this is like some guy's got this thing from a shop and put it into a box of piss, and then taken a photograph of it, and now it's on the wall, and he's saying like that's art. It's like, okay. And I just remember at that stage, like, kind of just all the thoughts in my head were kind of going, oh wow, what is this? This is a whole new world. Is this even possible? I think there's almost like the thoughts you have as you sort of start to become an adult and you start to become older, and you start to think, wow, what are all these things that people talk about? Maybe I can kind of be part of this. And I remember my dad on the way home in the car saying, "Oh, what did you think?" And I sort of remember kind of going, as a teenager, kind of going, "Yeah, yeah, quite liked it," but just thinking, I've got no idea what I think. I don't know. I don't know what was that. Unbelievable. It wasn't till years later, I got probably about 5 years later, I kind of heard about Andy Warhol and got
Mm.
into looking at some of the stuff he did. And I mean, I love some of his photographs and some of his treatments, but he did like this amazing like wallpaper that was just pictures of cows, like a cow wallpaper. And I was like, wow, a wallpaper like that can be art. And then he did these silver pillows. I don't know if you saw them. These like, you just walk into a room and he's got these beautiful silver pillows that are filled with helium, like helium balloons, and they're just like floating about. And it's at 20 or 18 or 19 or 20, I'm kind of going, wow, like this is art. And then I remember at that Andy Warhol exhibition, I think it was at the Tate, there was a quote from him saying, art is what you can get away with. And I just loved it. I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, that's amazing. I don't, and I'm no good at painting. So I was like, geez, yeah, you don't even have to be good at painting or drawing it was nothing like what they taught us at school about what art, it was just an idea or a thing. And I kind of loved that then. And I've always loved that.
I just think it's such an interesting thing because when I talk to artists, when I talk to writers, when I talk to musicians, they seem to struggle to really call themselves that. It's like the day you get admitted as a lawyer, you're a lawyer, right? Even if you've never had a client or done anything, you are a lawyer. And I mean, I am a lawyer. I can say I'm a lawyer, but there's an emotional struggle that people seem to have with claiming to be an artist or claiming to be a writer. And yet, in your example there of Andy Warhol, like he's someone who started very much in our space, right, of kind of advertising, and he did the windows at Bergdorf Goodman's. He did album covers for particular bands and all of those kind of interesting things that he did in that kind of very commercial space before he found his particular way of expressing himself through what, others would define as art. And I think it's kind of interesting with a creative career, like where does the, commercial aspect end versus where does the art begin?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, another like with the Andy Warhol thing you just mentioned there. Another thing that's kind of I've always loved and has played into your question there is that I think he didn't really wait for someone else to say, "Oh, you're an artist," or really care about what do you call it, like art critics and reviewers and stuff. Again, I remember there was another quote on the wall at that exhibition that I saw, the Andy Warhol exhibition, where he said something like, "While they're all reviewing it and critiquing it, just ignore them and get on with doing more art," or something like that. And it's like it was just you don't need to wait for, I don't know, the art authorities or the anyone to say, "Oh, yeah, you can be admitted into the, into the club because you've reached a certain level." There's another, there's this brilliant document I love from, the Italian futurists from about, like, 1905. Oh, no, was it the 1910s, I think, where one of their points was, regard all critics as useless and dangerous. And I've always loved the idea of, like, yeah, the people that are critiquing it and trying to work it out and explain it and say it's good or not good or whatever, like, just let them get on with it. Um, don't worry about that, what they're going to say. Just get on with, like, doing what you think's good, or, making what you think's good. It's a little bit different when you talk about, because you just mentioned, Kiva, the commercial side of things, and that's obviously bringing, this is less art, but more in the commercial space where you bring in clients and brands and, professional things that agencies do. And that's kind of a slightly different thing where there's collaboration and there's um, parameters and so on. And that obviously has to be followed. But I do really like the grey space where that all kind of gets blurred a bit. And you're like, oh, is this a work project, or is this just an artistic project, or is it a bit of both? I love that. I love it when when we try and do it, or I try and do it myself. And when I see other agencies or people doing stuff like that, then you're like, oh, it's kind of not quite one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been about these kind of systems of power who's defined what art can be and what art isn't. I mean, if you look historically at art, some of the great works, the traditional, the very traditional works, were in fact commercial works. They were paid for portraiture or things like that. So to me, there's always been this kind of commerciality in art, and now obviously we have the medium of advertising and we have branding and all these kinds of different threads of commerciality where art exists. But I, for one, believe that, that moment of creation and expression, of course, clients will give you as much or as little leverage as you can have with a brief. But I think that there is art embedded in a lot of the works that we do. And of course, there are works that I would say are devoid of it. But I don't know, for me, there's something about how authentic is the expression? How creative is it? Does it actually build meaning as opposed to just message?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, you're making me think of, I don't know if you've ever seen or been to the Rothko room in London, or it's not there anymore actually, but in the Tate Modern in London, they used to have this Rothko room with these amazing collection of these big old, like, kind of quite gloomy red Rothko paintings. It's just so, it's probably used to be my favorite place in London to just go and sit and just, you know, just meditate or just kind of reflect. But he kind of got commissioned to paint those ones for a restaurant in, I think it's the Four Seasons Hotel restaurant in New York. And I think when he was done, I think they were like a little bit horrified because they were like, "Oh my God, people don't want to be looking at this depressing stuff while they're eating their dinner," and they had a bit of an argument about it. And then he just kind of he took them back and went, "Well, yeah, you guys clearly don't get it, so I'm going to keep them for myself. I don't want them hanging in your restaurant." And I guess the commerciality and the artisticness like just didn't were like oil and water in that sense. It just didn't quite work. But I've always liked the idea of, yeah, people sitting there having dinner and these like super gloomy Rothko paintings are there just, yeah, depressing you.
Which is a vibe, right? That's what the kids would tell us today. It's a vibe. It was probably just not the vibe that, the restaurant was looking for. Really, maybe they needed to extend their wine list or kind of, do something a bit heavier there. But I just think it's a really interesting space. And I think it's interesting as well because a lot of people in a commercial creative field, such as advertising, do end up creating art, that they do for their own personal gratification or for their own, desire to do something that's outside of their client work. And I'm not saying that that then doesn't become commercial in a sense of you can make money from it, it's profitable. But I think it's just a really interesting tension that we have in that these kind of creative fields attract people who are by and large today's artists. But there's this kind of, I don't know, there's just this strange thing where people won't regard, like I've seen some great copywriting over the years that I would say is as good a writing as, Murakami or any of these great novelists. And yet it's in an advertising form or it's in a campaign form. And, I think it's like a societal value that we place on particular types of writing as opposed to, the writing that might do every day for clients.
Yeah. No, I totally know what you mean. I think there's this really good quote from, I think it's from Jeff Goodby from Goodby Silverstein agency, brilliant agency, who said advertising is art in service of commerce. Because I think it's like, it's good to kind of, because sometimes we're working on something and people say, well, it's not art, we're just doing ads, and it's like, well, it can be art, or it could, like you just said, it can be as good as art, but you just have to be clear that, yeah, all right, this is not going to be hanging in the Tate or the Guggenheim or whatever. But it can be as good as that. It's just for a different reason, because we're trying to use the art to sell something or get people to change their behavior or some way or whatever it may be. Whereas the other version of art, not in service of commerce, is more purely to move people or whatever, make them feel a certain way. But no, I totally agree with you. It can be and it should be as good as art. Why shouldn't we?
Aspire to that. I agree. And so tell me about Rubbish Fantastic. Where did this begin? What gave you the inspiration and why kind of in the last few years? Why at this point in your life?
Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, going back to kind of a little bit more of a traditional way of advertising that there used to, I mean, there still is a bit of this, but the whole creative teams, art directors and copywriters kind of, that's the team, and these are the roles, and this person's the writer, and they'll do the words, and this person's the art director because they're good at drawing or whatever, so they're gonna, or making things look good or design, so they're going to be the art director. Like literally from the time I started advertising, I always wanted to be a copywriter because I really like reading and writing, as we've spoken about. But I just, I kind of got working with a few art directors in the early days where they'd be like, right, and now I'll do the design, or I'll make it look good. And I always wanted to like meddle with that stuff as well. And like, they'd be like, no, you just do the headline and we'll kind of, we'll design it. And I've just always kind of thought it's just one big pie. And I want to be involved in all the parts of baking the pie, even though I'm not particularly technically good at all those other parts. I just kind of, it just, it always struck me that everyone who's creative should be able to, be involved in all those things. So, um, from the very time I got into advertising, when and again, this is a little bit back in the day as well, because it's not done this way so much anymore. But those like scamps that people do of an ad, just a crappy little scamp of a drawing with a headline and just with a marker pen. I'd always sort of done up my own scamps, and I'd always for years had people going, "Oh my God, those scamps are so terrible," but they're almost like amusing because it's like so badly. They're almost like so bad they're good sort of thing, because I'm really like not a good drawer, but I would just try to, draw people or have a hat, and people would be like, "Oh my God, that's like hilariously bad." And I'd always enjoyed it. And then like a few years ago, a couple of years ago, I kind of, I wanted to, I'd done a few paintings over the years. I really enjoyed doing the painting, but in this kind of quite technically terrible style. I just kind of had the idea to start doing some paintings, painting using that style as well, not just in my advertising work, but just for my own enjoyment, because I just find painting is just so stress relieving and so so calming. I've come home when you come home from a really full-on day at work and had lots of meetings or presentations or whatever, to sit and paint with some music on or a podcast on is just so beautifully calming. And there's an artist called David Shrigley. I don't know if you know him, but he's an amazing. He's a brilliant artist, but he's like not Rembrandt. He's not doing these beautifully technically amazing Rembrandt stuff. He's doing quite simple stuff. And I kind of started to think, well, and I'm definitely not as good as that guy, David Shrigley, but I just kind of thought, well, yeah, if that can be art, it doesn't have to be Rembrandt. I can kind of paint things and have like silly ideas, and I can be a bit daft with it. And also, I've just had a day of collaborating and having other people's opinions and the guidelines and the this and that and the client feedback and so on. Um, the Rubbish Fantastic is a space for me where there's no feedback, there's no guidelines, there's no mandatories and any of that. There's just kind of like me kind of going, oh, I think that'd be funny. I'm gonna paint that and just do that. So just pure creative play and freedom, which I just really love, and I think is really important for all creative people.
But there's something, I mean, I'm a shit potter. I have a pottery wheel and I have a kiln. This is one of the random things about me. But like if I did a collection of pottery, no one would buy it. I mean, my mother barely accepts the pottery that I give her. It's that bad. It's really awful. But I do it for the relaxation of it when, you know, it is relaxing and to just get out of your head and to be, as, you know, much like you were describing, have a podcast on, go somewhere else, leave the world behind. And the wonderful thing about centering clay, if you've ever done it, is you really can't think of anything else. It is such a kind of meditative thing for someone who has a very busy mind. But there's no idea, there's no observation in my pottery. It is just horrible lumps of clay from a very, you know, non-talented potter. But when I look at your Rubbish Fantastic, there's such beautiful observation in it. Like, yes, the drawings are not, you know, technically kind of up there with art direction or anything like that, but the ideas that sit
Definitely.
underneath them are really powerful, and they're very, you know, you really are kind of touching on some of the stronger narratives of today. So tell me a little bit about that side of it, because it's really not just doodling. This is not about just, you know, kind of creating silly drawings. There's a lot of meaning that I think is sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think there's this brilliant quote from Sir John Hegarty that I've always loved, where he said, "Great work is 80% idea and 80% execution," and that obviously mathematically does not make any sense. But I kind of totally see what he's trying to say. Like really good things have got a really good idea or an interesting idea, and then they're interestingly brought into the world. And so I kind of and like I love all kinds of art, and I kind of love art that's just beautiful thing, a painting of a fruit bowl or a still life or whatever, just looking at it. But I don't know, my particular sensibility is like um, taking, like you just sort of touched on, Keeva, like things that you notice in life or kind of insights that you might have or things that come to you. And I kind of thought, oh, can I marry that with and bring it to life in reality? Kind of another place we were talking about books, like another place where I see that is like really good writers. Like I read this book recently. This is another really good book called the Bee Sting. Read this book, The Bee Sting. Like, every single page, you're just kind of reading it and you're going, he just like, as well as this really cool, really interesting story about a big family and stuff that's amazing, but it's just like sentence for sentence. There's so many ideas in it. Like he must be carrying a notebook around with him, kind of going, oh, teenagers are like this, or isn't it disappointing when this happens? And like the just dropping in insights that people relate to throughout the story. I kind of wanted to do something a bit like that, but just with a painting. So you look at a painting, you kind of, and I've written it out as a headline or you've written it out as a word, and people are kind of like going, yeah, um, you know, Kanye West is a bit of a dick, or yeah, wouldn't it be interesting if if this happened, or you know, I don't know. I try and weave them into into all of the paintings. So they kind of stop you because of the silly slash terrible execution, but they also kind of hold you there for a little bit longer to kind of make you think about something in some way. And the thoughts can be kind of quite big and broad. Like I did one around the time of the the Voice vote when that didn't go through. That was really heartbreaking. I did one that was like really sad, and like a lot of people got in touch with me and went, "Oh God, that was really moving. Like that really touched me." And then I also kind of like, for example, did one about how the greatest um, the greatest inventions in the world, things like the internet or Michelangelo's paintings, and then Jaffa cakes. To me, I'd like just as amazing, for example. So yeah, like kind of silly things and big things, and kind of yeah, rubbish fantastic is like a feels like a forum where I can kind of yeah indulge both ends of the spectrum.
For me, when I look at it, it reminds me a little bit of great comedy. When you think about great comedians, they're highly political, right? They are speaking to a moment. They are, getting you to nod and go, yeah, I feel that, I get that, and that's very much of the now. And then yet 10 years later, you watch it back, and maybe those things aren't as important now, or maybe there's just not as much tension around those things. When I look at Rubbish Fantastic, I think the almost silliness of the drawing style is necessary, because if you had something heavy or I don't know, technically kind of very, very good, I think the whole thing would start to feel very just weighty and negative and heavy. But it's like the silliness
Yeah,
of it is almost the irony that kind of comes out through the work, which is that, are you
yeah, yeah. I love
conscious
that.
of that? Is it something that you're, or is it just you just had to kind of get this stuff out on the page?
Oh, stuff like no, yeah. I don't. I'm not sort of. I don't think I was sort of went in intentionally being super conscious of it, but just at the back of my mind, I think there's. I've always loved that idea of. Do you know, like in ancient times of yore, the court jester, and like they
Mhm.
had these court jesters who would kind of like dress up in the funny clothes and like would be there to kind of amuse the king or just do silly dances or whatever and be completely puerile. And I suppose like the point of those court jesters was basically to be able to talk truth to power, because no one could actually go up to the king and go, "Oh, mate, you can't invade that because then they'll probably get their head chopped off or whatever." So the court jester was a way to kind of like get those messages across in a fun way that no one, the king's not going to get offended and go crazy. So I've always kind of liked that. And then you look at things like, do you know, like Gary Larson, The Far Side,
Mhm.
where he's like them kind of silly doodles and stuff, but sometimes he'll touch on a really quite serious thing or an important thing, and it really kind of cuts deep because you're used to him doing funny things about, I don't know, cows and animals and dogs and stuff. But yeah, it's every now and then there's one where you're like, oh wow, that's actually pretty deep. Like, and you'll just be thinking about it for ages. Eddie Izzard's another one as well. I don't know
Mhm.
if you're familiar with his comedy work, but in comedy he'll kind of do these funny voices and silly voices and all this kind of daft scenarios. Um, but then there's always like a point to it, or you kind of always come away and you're cracking up because he's so funny and brilliant at all the voices. But you're also like, oh wow, he's landed a really important point about authority or control or power or whatever it may be. But it's just dressed up in these really light, fun things. So I try and slip a few of those things in as well, basically.
Yeah, and you can see that. I mean, obviously there's things like Cat GPT, which is probably, it's playful. You're playing on the words, it's a pun, and the just everyone's obsession right now with Chat GPT and AI and all of that kind of stuff. But, obviously there was stuff around the election, and there were other pieces that felt far more, which probably in 5 years the characters will have changed and people won't know. So it is very time capsule as well. It does kind of take people to a moment and makes a really clear statement around, something that's going on right here, right now, and very geographically in Sydney or in Australia in particular. It's got a real, um, yeah, it's poignant. It's got that sense of like, let's think about this, but let me bring you, the attention through this crazy drawing that grabs your eye first, and then the copy's there to kind of provoke the thought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a few that I've done about Clive Palmer when he was like spending zillions on election campaigns and stuff, and just poking little bit of gentle ribbing of Clive, and people were like, "Oh, he's going to sue you. He's got, he's going to get his lawyers. He's going to get his $1 billion lawyers, and he's going to sue you." But I kind of thought, I don't know. Number one, I doubt Clive Palmer's like looking at Rubbish Fantastic and kind of, what am I up to today? But even if he was, it's like kind of. It's all done in a kind of a gently humorous way that sort of, like I was saying, kind of makes a point and is a gentle ribbing, that's kind of the tone of it, and people can take what they want from it.
Well, frankly, if he starts suing you, I would imagine that would be the best PR campaign you could buy for your art.
Yeah, true. True. Yeah, yeah.
I often think of
I mean,
that Gina Reinhardt painting that, frankly,
yeah,
99.9% of the population would never have even known existed had she not
yeah, very
got
true.
so offended by it and, turned
Yeah,
it into
so
front
true.
page news and given that artist probably the best, kind of profile that he'd ever sought without just
Yeah,
by making work that was in his style and true to him. But her offence
yeah.
was
You're making me
fabulous.
wish that Clive had, yeah, you're making me wish that Clive had, sued me now. You're right, yeah.
We can just keep posting it on his Instagram and wait, but
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
tag
I,
yeah.
what's that? No publicity and all that kind of thing. Um, and so you had a gallery showing, and what was that moment like? Did you feel that you could step into that side of yourself and, you know, I mean, I know people who worry about like what would clients think of this kind of element, or and I know Coco Gun is a different kind of agency because it's built very much around values, and it's very much about, people know who you are, right, from the outset with Coco Gun. But was there any fear like, oh, maybe this stuff isn't, gallery worthy, or did you have any trepidation about it whatsoever?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, number one, definitely, yes. A few. I mean, one of them was like the whole, one big thing was the whole, imposter syndrome thing that people, I don't know, I've come to realize that most people have actually, that, and the people that haven't got imposter syndrome are kind of, I worry about them. People like Donald Trump probably needs a bit, but, um, kind of going back to your question, right? One of your questions right at the start of our chat, Kiva, about, oh, are you an artist? Can you be an artist? So there was definitely like a, well, this art's not even that, not even that good, technically that good. Why should it be in a gallery? And who's going to buy it? Who's going to want to buy it? And all of those sorts of things. So I definitely had some of those thoughts. Um, but yeah, and then definitely kind of because some of the Rubbish Fantastic stuff is a bit near the knuckle and is a bit cheeky and puerile, and there's lots of knob gags and all sorts of stuff that's like not safe for work, but a bit kind of uh, a little bit edgy and that kind of thing. And I think it's all about the spirit in which it's done. It's all like the whole Rubbish Fantastic thing is just all done in a spirit of playfulness, fun, humor. Even the stuff where there's kind of a serious point to be made, like I was saying before, it's like a gentle ribbing. It's not like it's not getting too aggro. Um, and I kind of also calling back to that book I was talking about, All Fours,
Mm.
where she was kind of trying to find out who she should be in the next part. I kind of decided a little while ago, it's probably it was before I read that book, but the best version of me is when, and that gives me the most inner peace and brings my best work into the world, is when I don't sort of second guess myself and worry about what other people are thinking, and when I'm really like just authentically myself and honest with myself and with other people. The minute I start thinking, "Oh, is that okay?" or "Are they going to like me?" or trying to change myself to what I think people want me to be in work or in anything, in any scenario, that's the crap version of me. But when you kind of just do the authentic thing, um, you don't have to have those stresses. You don't have to worry, about being someone else. And I've really, probably over the last 5 years, really tried to step into that. And this is one of those things where it's just like, this is kind of, this is my thing. This is what I do. And we had loads of clients there, and they all know me and they kind of get it and they get the spirit that it's kind of done in. And, even actually, I've got one here. Look, this was the name of the, oh, there we go. That's not art. It's just a bunch of cocks and, um, even like the name of it and the posters, like, we had some conversations in here about, "Oh god, is that a bit much? Is it?" But it's just, yeah, it's just a spirit of playfulness and not wanting to censor myself and doing it in a certain way. So, yeah, we had, like people were buying these things as posters, and then we had some T-shirts made with
Yeah,
like
they were
knob pictures
fantastic.
I like and pictures of poos and like people, I think some of the team were wearing them, and like people would come up and go, "Oh, that's amazing! What? Oh, it's a cock! Oh, it's a poo! Oh my god!" But people kind of love the t-shirts, and w still today, they send me pictures of them wearing, like, the t-shirts to, like, a family do, or people will say, "Oh, I wore the t-shirt to a work do," or, "I wore the t-shirt to, my in-laws," or whatever. It's, just cracks me up, and people bought, like, a lot of the stuff that's, a lot of the pictures that are kind of a bit ruder or a bit more puerile, shall we say, and people kind of, bought them and put them up on their wall and send me a photo of that picture up on their house. It's hilarious. Love it.
I love that you've mentioned imposter syndrome there. I think a lot about imposter syndrome because I think it's kind of it needs a rebrand. I actually think that imposter syndrome is not so much about people feeling like an imposter, but really the fear of actually, if they show up as their true selves, what are people going to think? I think it's more about kind of an authenticity. I think that that is actually when you're at your most vulnerable because you really are sitting there and saying to the world, here I am. And now the feedback is so much more powerful because it's true. You know, there's no kind of
Yeah.
getting around. Not that you should ever give other people that much power over their opinions. I mean, I know that there's young people who go, well, you know, maybe I'm not qualified enough or I don't have the 10 years or that's probably a slightly different thing. But I think that we get to a point in our lives where the hardest thing is actually to really put yourself out there as your true self. And then when you do, people are going to have feelings, right? There's going to be some people who don't like that, who prefer maybe the more controlled version of you or the more, I don't know. It's something I think about a lot because I think it's something I would hate for my daughters in particular, you know, to ever grow up in a world where they feel that they have to be a certain kind of female because there's so much, you know, conditioning around what is an appropriate woman, what is, you know, female sexuality, what is self-expression in that kind of female.
I kind of agree with you on the imposter syndrome thing. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of you're right. There's one version of it which is like, oh, I'm not qualified and I haven't done the 10 years or got that qualification. But there's a whole other part which is just about are people going to like or be warm to the authentic me kind of thing. So maybe I should tone it down, or I don't have the right to be here for whatever reason. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things I think about it where it comes up a lot is when I'm talking to other people. When I think about it for myself is, and I know you do a lot of this, presenting. People are like, "Oh, but why have I been asked to talk at this thing, or why should I?" You know, or they're asking themselves, and I might be asking myself, what gives me the right to stand up and talk to all these people about whatever the subject may be? But and then people might say, "Oh, you're a good presenter, or you're not a good presenter, or you need to whatever." I just kind of find in those scenarios, just the authentic you is just so like it's not that hard when you do the authentic you. It's when you try and be someone that you're not and you're trying to be more gravitas or more whatever. That's hard. But just being the authentic you is kind of is really straightforward. And then, yeah, like you say, some people may like that, some people don't. And that's I'm kind of got comfortable with that now. Didn't used to
Yeah.
be.
I mean, little secret of mine, I used to be the most nervous public speaker, which most people don't know about me because, you know, I've stood on stages now
Right?
and I speak
Yeah.
all around the world and, you know, you
Do a
can't
lot.
kind of shut me up. But it took me to realize that people just don't care that much. You know, like no one's sitting there at a conference hating on the speaker unless the speaker's really said something that goes against their particular values or you know, most people are just sitting there thinking about their own lives and taking bits and pieces and, you know, they might laugh at your joke, they may not. Did you find it funny? I kind of find the audience of me is more important these days than, you know, maybe what someone in row 15 thinks or whether my hair's fine or whatever it is. And that's age and that's, you know, lots of different things. But yeah, I certainly, a few years back, I released a t-shirt brand for a little while called Ms. T, and it was very provocative. And I remember that was a moment in my life where I was showing a different part of myself, a less polished part of myself, a part of myself that was much more provocatorial and was gonna, you know, and that the bravery that took to kind of allow people to see that side of me, I think is something that you must feel with Rubbish Fantastic. And hopefully that launch and all the success of it and the incredible comments you got gave you some assurance that it's fabulous work and it's fun and people do enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, God, that's amazing. All of that was amazing, especially to hear that you had those feelings, years ago before you became like a global powerhouse speaker that you are today. But it's kind of, and maybe you feel this as well. Don't know if this chimes with you, but when you do when you do step into that, like this, like the exhibition that you talked about, and you pull it off, and people, the reactions are positive. Even before the reactions, it's so liberating. It's so liberating and just feels so good to just kind of go. To be honest, if no one came to the exhibition and no one bought any of the paintings, I'd still be fine with me. I still think, well, I did what was authentic to me and I put it out there. So, yeah, that feeling of liberation was just such a buzz. And then, and like not because I think like years ago, 10 years ago, there'd be a version of me that would be apologizing for it or kind of making excuses or explaining, did this. Didn't do any of that. I just went like, "This is it. You can like it or not like it, and that's fine." And then also just another really cool thing was we sold a load of paintings and then gave the money to. We've got this Coca Gun Scholarship for Indigenous student creatives and raised a bunch of money for that cause. So it was just so lovely to kind of think I'd done this work and people liked it, and um, it all kind of really helped to really like a really really good cause I'm passionate about. So yeah, that was cool too.
And then it had impact, which is amazing. And I was thinking, and as you were saying that
Yeah.
about, one of your earlier comments today about, Sydney not having enough culture, do you think we're all just a bit repressed and we're all a bit fearful to just express ourselves and try things such as, to have that kind of leaning into art and self-expression? And I mean, if there was 10 versions of Rubbish Fantastic and not the same, but if there were 10 people out there, sharing their expression every week, Sydney would be a cultural melting pot, wouldn't it not? Would it not be the most, like, the hottest ticket in town?
Yeah, I reckon it is because I definitely don't want to be Mr. Anti-Sydney. I used to be that and like kind of used to go, oh, there's just nothing. But I've kind of come to realize this is where I'm on it anyway, is that I think there are hundreds of rubbish, fantastic, all these different things. Like it's just they're kind of small. It's not like London where there's a massive scene, there's a massive music scene and everyone's into it. It's more like there's these little pockets. Like, for example, um, there's a guy that works at Coco Gun, a guy called Lewis Clark, who's in a band, Blockbuster, that are amazing band, BLK Buster, BLKBSTR, that's how they spell it. And they're like I don't know, small to medium sized. They get played on the radio sort of band, and they've got like a little scene going on with them and other bands. It's like they're not like the Rolling Stones, but like they're doing gigs and they're doing like amazing videos, and I just love it. And then my son that I mentioned before, Oscar, he's 19. He's a hip hop music producer, video maker, and so on.
Wow.
And he's just in this scene of like these young kids that are like teenagers that are really into young Australian rap and hip hop. And that's a whole like scene with like loads of amazing rappers and they put on events and so on. And like that's kind of going on. And I just think like there's these little pockets of amazing stuff that's just so inspiring, be it music or art or whatever. You just kind of yeah, it's just not on a plate like in a London or in Brooklyn or whatever, but it's kind of it's definitely there. And I guess 52-year-old Anne is not kind of out every night going to like the latest rap gigs because, spending a bit more time at home and so on. But I think it is there. It's just, yeah, I don't know about the repressed thing. I just think it's just there's these smaller pockets rather than big, massive waves of stuff.
And everyone tells me Western Sydney's where it's at, right? We're a more pocketed society today. There's always these little pockets to discover. And I think with Australia, sometimes the cities are the worst places to be, right? You need to actually get out of the cities and find how people have created little pockets of culture within the suburbs and what's going on. But unfortunately, our public transport isn't as good as it ought to be to allow that to be easily accessible. And that's another podcast though. We can't fix all of the public transport issues of Sydney, I'm
Yeah.
afraid.
Right though, when you mentioned Western Sydney, I'm sure there's loads going on in Western Sydney, like loads of amazing stuff. So yeah, so true.
And, we're probably of that age now where we prefer a nice wine bar, but I love the fact that there is that spirit that's kind of emerging, I think, especially in places like Western Sydney, where you've got lots of young people and lots of creativity and just, maybe not so much in our more sterile cities, which is kind of a
The way I
change.
the way I see it is like it was when I was in London and, the stuff's all, stuff's all around you, and then I had kids, so I wasn't going out quite so much, 'cause I'm, bringing up kids and whatever, but if I did wanna go to the theatre, if I did wanna go to a musical, if I did wanna like, you just know it's there. It's not that I'm going out every night, and I think it's the same here. Like, I'm not out every night because that's not the life stage I'm in, but I like the idea that if I really wanted to dive in and sort of, do something cool or be inspired, that you could go to Western Sydney or you could go to a cool gig or whatever. It's there. It is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, I took a friend who is much younger than me to a bar the other day in the city, and he's like, I had no idea this kind of cool bar existed. So, a little bit of Googling, a little research,
Yeah,
even we can find kind of places and just claim it as our own.
yeah,
Um,
love it.
and I've so enjoyed having this kind of conversation with you. I think your career is so fascinating. I think you're someone who really does show up as a very authentic leader in your agency and someone whose work I have always admired. And I mean, you've got incredible talent as a writer, but it's how you've applied that and what you've done with it that I think is kind of most interesting. And I think Rubbish Fantastic is just,
Thank you.
you know, the zenith of that. I love it. And I mean, I felt like this could have been, you know, anywhere in the world, that exhibit. I thought it was fantastic and it was so interesting to me. I was like, here's another layer to this man that I need to kind of unravel and unpack, and you've given us some great book suggestions as well, which I'm really excited to kind of dive on into.
Awesome. Oh, thanks, Kiva. Yeah, yeah. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I just love nothing more than just sitting around talking about art and books and culture and all of those things. So yeah, it's been fun.